seeing the water drops or the tankers up there because a lot of that is because of the thick smoke, not because they are not there. They are out there doing their job, dropping water, dropping retardant, but this is one of those fires that they've really been fighting from the air and not on the ground. But we continue to watch as it looks like we are seeing less flames up at the top of this mountain, Mark.
Yeah, that's true. And if I want you to come out to my screen again, I actually found something really interesting. One of these cameras actually has a loop going back more than 12 hours. So this is from basically midnight this morning. And if you look and see, there is a work crew up there of firefighters that appear to be doing structure protection. So as long as 12 hours ago, this embers and parts of this fire have approached at least one side of Santiago Peak. And you can see even as late as 4 this morning, those trucks there on the right side of your screen, along with firefighters, were keeping watch and doing some kind of work up there to keep these structures safe. Now, as you can see, as this time lapse continues, it's going to get a little brighter. We're crossing about 6 a.m. now. And you can see there are firefighters down there watching and making sure that this fire burns away from the peak. And it looked like it was burning away, but at some point in just the last hour or so, it has come back perhaps from another direction. Now you see the camera changes. This is also a really good look, and it looks like perhaps from the west, this is looking westward towards the ocean. Those firefighters got out of there real quick, and then you can see this fire makes its just inexorable march up the side of the hill, right up to and in consuming a lot of the brush and grass that is there at Santiago Peak. So that's where the loop ends just about 5 minutes ago. So that's the current situation up there. I have not seen a further update here to that time lapse, but it sure does look smoky up there. But this is now live pictures from SkyCal. Amy, it does appear to not show any active flames. So I'm not sure if this is a case where the fire just simply burned most of the vegetation that was up there that was admittedly not very thick or tall vegetation, thankfully, and there was good brush clearance, or if perhaps there was a water drop or a retardant drop that we didn't quite see. But it does look, for now, from my perspective, our vantage point, there does not appear to be that many active flames up there.
Exactly, Mark, and you can kind of see over towards the right there. That is where more of those flames are and more of that fire. We're just seeing a lot of smoke out there that is blocking a lot of the flames that would typically be visible, but there is still a lot of smoke out there, still a lot of brush that is burning in this area, and it looks as though the fire may be going over to the side. As Paul was telling us, the winds have been shifting, and that is forcing the fire in a different direction, but that is not necessarily good news if it is in fact going towards the homes that are in the community. Now, I was thinking from this vantage point that the homes were back behind on the other side and not as if looking ahead of this hillside here. Those were some of the areas that I know were dealing with the evacuation orders yesterday, which was the Cook's Corner area, the Trabuco Canyon, Trabuco Creek Road, Trabuco Oaks Drive, Joplin Loop, Rose Canyon Road, Meander Drive, and the Robinson Ranch community. Now, the fire was moving away from those areas, but now it's hard to say exactly which direction that fire will in fact go. The good thing is fires don't typically reverse and burn back over where they have already burned, because they have already scarred that section. And so it would go to the side, and we're just hoping that that is not what is going to happen. We do not want this fire to go back towards any of those homes, but there have been certainly mandatory evacuations underway in Ortega Highway near Caspers Park. And a lot of folks, left home today, perhaps not realizing that their area was going to be evacuated, perhaps leaving pets at home. But we're hoping that people have been preparing for this. When there's a fire anywhere in your area, you really need to start thinking in advance and start thinking about those 5 Ps that FEMA talks about: your prescriptions, your important paperwork, your prized possessions. You've got to get all of that together. And even if it's not packed up completely, maybe put it close to the door so that you can just grab it if the fire moves in your direction. And we're hoping that people have done the necessary steps, because this Fire is still burning. It is not anywhere near being put out at this point, and we are still dealing with changing winds. Although the bright side here is that the temperatures are not as hot as they were yesterday, but that cooler weather is coming because the winds are finally coming and pushing the fire.
Oh, hold on a second.
Paul?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We are seeing what looks like this column of smoke, Amy, is pretty much going almost straight up, which is a good indicator that the winds are not severe up there, but the temperature very, very hot. This is, there doesn't appear to be too many hand crews working on this other than that one crew that we saw that was up there guarding Santiago Peak in the early morning hours. But it really is very, very hot up there. And, water dropping aircraft are usually hardened against high temperatures. They should not have a problem with any of that. They just need to be able to land and refuel and pick up water, probably at Lake Elsinore. That's the closest one to the east. But we continue to see that white smoke coming up from Santiago Peak. We have been working with my assignment desk in the newsroom to confirm that we are able to still communicate with our transmission equipment on Santiago Peak. It looks like it is still operating. So again, the equipment up there may have been saved. They may have been very lucky in order to stop this fire from damaging any significant parts of that equipment up there. But the rest of the fire, the bulk of the fire, as you said, continues to burn in sort of a northeast and southeast direction. You made a comment on how fires don't usually go back on themselves. That's exactly right. And if they end up sort of flowing back on themselves because of a change in the wind, that's usually a very, very good thing for firefighters because it will burn itself out. Although we're not really seeing too much of that here in this particular fire. Lake Elsinore and the areas to the north and south of this fire are under an evacuation warning. That is certainly an indication that firefighters in their strategic planning think that this may be moving towards that riverside community. So they're asking people, as you said, to get those 5 Ps ready and be ready to get out of their homes if this fire continues to burn.
Absolutely, Mark, and we do know that Orange County supervisors have declared a emergency there, which of course provides more resources for the folks out there. And again, the evacuation warnings for Silverado Canyon and Majeska Canyon. We've been talking about the weather, Paul, and the bright side is that it's a little cooler, but the downside is with that change in the weather comes more wind.
More wind and a wind direction change. You guys have been talking about that, but we always want to see what is downwind, what communities, what homes, what roads, what highways are downwind of a fire. And I want to step out of the way to show you that blob that you see in the middle of that map. That is the actual perimeter of the airport fire as of right now. And what I've drawn in is the wind profile. And you can see now, because we are cooling down. It's only 86 degrees in the mountains right now. We do have some localized gusts at 30 to 35 miles per hour, but the whole regime of the wind has changed. For 5 days, when we couldn't get out of the 100s, the wind was coming from the north to the south. That's an offshore wind. Today, that changed. And now the wind, you can see, is coming from the west and pushing the smoke and pushing the fire to the east. Now, that's good news for communities upwind. That would be Foothill Ranch and Mission Viejo. The wind profile is pushing the smoke and the fire away from you. But you can clearly see where the fire would be heading, that general direction, right toward Lake Elsinore. That is where the wind is pushing the smoke and pushing the fire right now. Now, there's a lot of real estate between here and here, but we always want to see where the wind is blowing and what communities would be next up in the path of a fire. That's what we see right now, with the wind now not coming from the north, but yes, coming from the west. You can see that Lake Elsinore is the town directly in the path of at least the wind currently, and this is going to be the wind for the next couple days. And there's the 15 I've just drawn in. There's Albert Hill, and if you head farther south toward Temecula, Murrieta. But there's the actual perimeter of the fire right now, and the wind profile is going from west to east. Even if folks aren't dealing with the fire itself, this is a visible satellite imagery, and you can see the past 2 hours of data here. All of that smoke is now covering the entire 15 corridor from Rancho Cucamonga, where it meets up with the 10, all the way down to Lake Elsinore. Kind of looks like a cloudy day outside. Not clouds, that is smoke. It is covering Riverside, it is covering all of San Bernardino, and it's now marching its way to the east to the 215 corridor. Now, this is elevated smoke, so it's not the stuff you're breathing, but that said, the air quality is quite bad in the Inland Empire. So we've got people on the 5 looking up and saying, wow, that's a big fire. You've got towns right next to the fire, including Lake Elsinore, and even if you're 50 miles away from the fire, the cloud of smoke is now over top of you, obscuring the sunshine as far north as San Bernardino and as far east now as Banning. So the weather's getting better from a macro sense in that it's getting cooler, humidity is going up, but that wind direction change is creating an increase in the wind, and it also is putting at risk towns like Lake Elsinore, because now that is downwind. It wasn't yesterday, today it now is. Amy, back to you.
And Paul, for the folks that have any issues with their health, this can be really tough to deal with. This smoke that is now really plaguing a whole new area. They were kind of in the clear yesterday, and now they are dealing with a lot of smoke coming right into their communities. And of course, it also is increasing the fire risk in those areas. As you mentioned, that wind pushing the fire in a new direction. Now it is the onshore, I guess, wind coming from the west that is now pushing that fire in a different direction. And so we now have more, let's see, Highway 74 is closed between Grand Avenue and Nichols, and it is limited right now to residents. So again, we have a new closure there. We know that we have evacuation warnings, and we're watching to see what new developments come our way. But this fire certainly nowhere near being put out. And as we keep watching this image from SkyCal Live, it's been very difficult to see the helicopters and the tankers that are out there making those water drops and dropping that retardant, but they are there. It's just very tough to see around this smoke. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you for sure, I've been looking at the radar here, and there are definitely at least 2 very large water-dropping, heavy-duty water-dropping helicopters. There's a Sikorsky Sky Crane that's out there. There's also a Chinook. Those are those really big, long helicopters with 2 rotors, front and back. It looks like they're both filling up at the Oso Reservoir, which is over near between Foothill Ranch and Rancho Santa Margarita. That's a very close and convenient source of water. If you come out to my screen, I can show you where it is, and I can also show you on my map where Santiago Peak is. Now, first of all, what I wanted to tell you about the bulk of the fire now, right about here, that's where the fire line is. This is that Oso Reservoir that the water-dropping helicopters are moving back and forth. It's very close. It's just a couple of miles away. But I'm going to zoom in, and I was actually trying to find here on this map where Santiago Peak is, and I'll zoom in right here. This is what we've been looking at for this afternoon. That is essentially, that's the top of Saddleback Mountain. That's where all that equipment is right there. And you can see it's right on the edge of the fire line. The last reported fire line is right there. And if I zoom in, I'm not sure how close I can get. You can actually see some of these buildings that we've been looking at. It's right at the end of Holy Jim Hiking Trail. It's a really long hiking trail. As I said, it's about 4,000 feet up the top of Saddleback Mountain. But you can see this is basically the northern leading edge of the airport fire, burning close to 9,000 acres. It's been burning since yesterday at about 1:30. And even on the radar here, this is actually a map that's run by CAL FIRE. You can see there's an air tactical plane here, also here. There's no helicopters listed right now because I believe they're actually right there at the Oso Reservoir below the radar as they're basically bringing up all of that water into their tank, and they're going to go right over there, and they're going to be doing those water drops on that fire. But looking back now at SkyCal, you can see this, I believe what we're seeing there on the right side of your screen is probably looking north to the line fire. That's probably the line fire out there. That's the other fire burning about 26,000 acres. Is burning to the northeast of Highland. This fire out there is threatening the areas of Running Springs, also Lake Arrowhead and Big Bear. Lake Arrowhead and Big Bear are under evacuation warnings. Running Springs under an evacuation order. But now we're looking back here at the fire. Looks like there was just a retardant drop. That might be that large 4-engine Avro that's there, capable of dropping 3,000 gallons of retardant. They're probably going perhaps to John Wayne. or perhaps an airport in Riverside County to load up on that retardant. But that's doing a really good job of keeping that fire line at bay and preventing that fire from spreading.
Yes, and we are trying to give you updates on the bottom of the screen. Again, mandatory evacuations for Ortega Highway, and that's near Caspers Park. And there are evacuation warnings in Silverado Canyon and Majeska Canyon. Certainly, we are watching very closely as winds are changing and shifting, and new areas are now being affected by this fire that were not yesterday afternoon when we began covering this. It's breaking news right around 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The fire starting with about 7 acres, and we saw resources out there right away, lots of aircraft out there fighting this fire, the airport fire, getting its name because it started near a remote control airplane strip there, landing strip. And so that is where the name came from. In case you were wondering, is there an airport near there? Where did that name come from? But it's a remote control airport in the area where this fire started down at the bottom of this hill. We watched as it burned up that hill. Lots of drops being made, retardant being dropped. It looked as though it was keeping this fire away from the top, but now we see it has burned 9,300 acres so far. And it is up there near our peak that has a series of radio and TV towers. We've been watching, and we were even able to see on the screen that there were actually some drops that were made on top of that peak. So hopefully all of that equipment is safe and will not be burning. And it looks as though the wind has shifted, and now it appears that instead of going up over the hill because it has already reached the top, it's moving to the side because our winds have shifted, and now they are coming from the west, as Paul has shown us. And now what is behind this fire now, where the direction has changed to, is Lake Elsinore, and a lot of that smoke is moving into that area, as Paul was showing us. But again, the airport fire is far from being put out. Resources are limited to just the air because of the rugged terrain, and there is a lot of brush that has been burning since yesterday afternoon. We are not quite at 24 hours, Mark, but we are going to be there in another couple of hours. And it's really tough to see all of the damage there of this hillside. But the good news is there have been no homes damaged from this fire. In fact, the fire has been burning away from homes for the last day here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, this region of the mountains in between Trabuco Canyon, Rancho Santa Margarita, and Lake Elsinore is really sparsely populated. That's both a blessing and a curse, because at least there are no, homes or buildings that could possibly burn in much of this terrain. But it's also a real problem because there's no access to this area. There's no real good roads for firefighters to use. I mean, there are trails up there. But this is going to be, as you mentioned, mostly an aerial firefight where you're having multiple units, aerial units from CAL FIRE, possibly Orange County Fire, Riverside County Fire, that are going to be doing water drops on here. As I continue to look at these cameras on my screen here of Santiago Peak, it looks like they are still receiving power. This last little bit of time lapse is just from 12:36. So it looks like most of the mountain apparently up there is going to be okay, and this fire is now progressing on to perhaps the eastern slope of the mountain and away from that sensitive equipment up there. So this, though, means that the communities of Lake Elsinore, both to the north and south of the lake, are going to have to prepare, possibly in the next 6 to 7 hours, be ready with all of that gear packed for an evacuation order. Looking here, you can see where on my screen some of these communities, all of this in yellow that you see here is basically the evacuation warnings all the way here through Temescal Valley and then down here closer to Wildemar. Those are evacuation warning areas. That's a huge section of Riverside County. Of course, there are still some yellow areas here of evacuation warnings, but I get the feeling that those probably are not an area of great concern. The one bit of evacuation orders are here down near where the fire started. I'll zoom in. It's this very small community right here. They call it, I believe they call it Trabuco Highlands Central Park. But there is a neighborhood here under red that is under mandatory evacuation. But you can see the fire started right there, as you had said, when some work crews were moving boulders and some of their equipment caught fire. But you can see just how vast this fire now is, more than 9,000 acres. And more of these aircraft have appeared right here on the radar. That one is definitely a water dropping helicopter, N-72HT. They're on their way to the fire. SkyCal may be able to see them do a water or retardant drop, which is really going to help the efforts. But just that single column of smoke there at the crest of that hill there near Saddleback Mountain is what we're seeing now, leaning a little bit to the left, indicating we are probably getting some wind up there on this fire, which is really not what firefighters want at this point.
No, it certainly isn't, Mark, and it is tough to see this fire still burning so vast at this hour when it is almost 24 hours after the fire started there in a very small area, only about 7 acres at that time, and now we're at 9,300 acres. And we are watching as the wind is shifting a bit there, heading in a new direction. But we do know that there are mandatory evacuations now in Ortega Highway near Caspers Park. There are evacuation warnings in Silverado Canyon and Majeska Canyon. We do know that the Orange County supervisors have approved an emergency declaration in this airport fire. But you can see from very far away the smoke just billowing up from this area. And yesterday afternoon, as we mentioned, this fire started before 3 o'clock. A lot of people started to come home, and we watched as those people were turned around. They were not able to make it home. They were in an area where our Jasmine Beal is live now in Robinson Ranch neighborhood. And we're going to get to Jasmine in just a moment, but we're going to take a quick break. So And we continue our coverage on the wildfires burning across our area. KCAL's Rick Montanez is reporting on the line fire that continues growing in San Bernardino County.
The big concern is for what the fire will do today. We are here at Highway 38 where the road is closed, but we've been watching as more resources head up into the mountains. We're talking about more personnel, more heavy equipment, but we're also seeing here on the ridge side some of the smoke coming off of the areas where the fire is burning right now. A red flag warning is in place from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. That is a local red flag warning because strong canyon winds and extreme heat will have an impact on the firefight. I just talked with CAL FIRE and they say conditions in these mountains should be less chaotic than the past few days, but still difficult conditions. They also now have more resources to help beat down the flames. Fire behavior has been erratic and we've watched as flames have burned through thick, dry brush. The county's fire chief and sheriff telling people that if you live in the Big Bear Valley area, be ready to leave at a moment's notice. The governor activated the National Guard, which helps bring in more resources. And with the evacuations, the San Bernardino County Sheriff says patrols will be out to protect homes.
That if anybody comes out, attempts to loot in this county, they will be arrested and they will be prosecuted. And we're going to be out there in force making sure that happens, including undercover units.
You know, they're doing everything they can to keep it under control, but you know, with an area that large, it's only so much you can do.
Check out this CAL FIRE map here to see where the fire has burned. That's the area marked in orange. Those red boxes, those are under mandatory evacuations. And the yellow boxes, that's the Big Bear Valley. That area is under a warning for possible evacuations. Again, the roads around here are closed, so they're reminding people that it may be difficult to get out if you have mandatory evacuation orders go in place, and there may be traffic jams, so just be warned about that. More than 26,000 acres burned in this fire, and there are now more than 2,000 firefighting personnel on the scene, so they're hoping to make significant progress today. Reporting in Mentone, Rick Montanez, KCAL News.
All right, Rick, and of course we want to continue our coverage of the airport fire, and that is where our Jasmine Veal is live in Robinson Ranch, a neighborhood there in Trabuco Canyon, and she's continuing our live team coverage of the airport fire. Jasmine, this was a very chaotic scene yesterday afternoon. How's it looking today?
Okay, so the residents are feeling much more calm about the situation here in Robinson Ranch as the fire is burning away from the neighborhood where I am standing, although still under that mandatory evacuation. And this fire has grown to more than 9,000 acres. Now, the concern just within the last few minutes was this hillside behind me had some fire kind of pick back up here. This is to the south, and so we just saw a few water drops happening. I mean, they have been on this. This is rough, steep terrain, and so they've been fighting this mostly from the air. And again, it is very hot out here. I have, as we swing around from this hillside, I want to show you where a lot of those water drops were also happening towards Santiago Canyon. We're going to talk about the new evacuation warnings now in place as, again, this fire is burning away from this community. But as Captain Holiday is here with the Orange County Fire Authority, what is the latest with these evacuation warnings for the area beyond those mountains?
Yeah, so the area to the north, they just pointed out, that's we're going to have evacuation orders from Majeska and Silverado Canyon. The fire crested up to Santiago Peak and is now starting back down those canyons towards those communities. So those warnings have been issued for Majeska and Silverado Canyon. The area behind us, as we get moving south away from Robinson Ranch, that fire is going to be burning down towards the Ortega Highway, and that's our next area of concern, that area, Ortega Highway. And those warnings went out earlier today. You go to ocsheriff.gov to get the latest on those as well.
It's still telling people to stand by here and just be ready to leave at a moment's notice.
Yeah, the fire behind us is not out by any means. It's been checked up by the retardant. The helicopters have been dropping on it, and we do have hand crews and dozers reinforcing that line. But at this point, there's no containment. So we're going to keep fire engines in these neighborhoods for the foreseeable future. Also, as we move that direction, they issued a warning for Coto de Caza, because it is just south of Robinson Ranch here. So they've just been issued a warning within the last half hour or so.
And I hear some more helitankers coming in. Talk to me about the gallons. I mean, I was so surprised to see how many, first of all, were flying through here, but one up to, what, 3,000?
Yeah, we have the Type 1 helicopters, which is the one you see in your camera right now. That is a 3,000 gallon water dropping helicopter. We also have, I believe we have 2 of those on the fire right now. And then we have multiple of the Type 2, like the Orange County Firehawks we just received. We have, both of those are working. And then we have, I believe it was 12 helicopters working the fire, the last number I heard.
What's your biggest concern right now, Captain?
Our biggest concern is just keeping this fire out of the communities. It's right now it's a topography-driven fire. We got a little bit of wind on it, but we really want to make sure we keep it out of the communities, protect people's homes and property.
Well, and I was talking to some of the folks who've decided to stay inside of their homes. A couple here and a family here with some kids. They said they have seen in years a fire get right up to their backyards, even more than the Holy Fire a few years ago.
Yeah, so this is part of our historic fire history path through here. And it's been a few years. I believe the Santiago fire in 07 was probably the last time it got this close. But again, the neighborhoods, the HOAs, the cities have done a great job with their mitigation of fuel management. So the fire's hasn't gotten to where it's imminently close. So kudos to the cities and the HOAs for protecting their own communities so we can get in here and do our job.
We talked about how much aerial support, 1,000 firefighters on the ground still?
Yeah, we still have 1,000 personnel, either on scene or en route. We're still waiting for a few resources that are coming from outside the region. We're not the only fire, we're not the only game in town right now, but we are getting all the resources we're requesting. It's just taking maybe a little longer than if we were the only fire.
Well, you had to give some resources to the line fire, the one in San Bernardino, correct?
Yeah, they've been giving back and forth resources. I don't know exactly how it's been going, but with our mutual aid system and the cooperating agencies, they've been sharing resources as needed, particularly the aircraft. They can make a drop here, reload it, hem it Ryan, and then split the difference of the 2 fires. But there's been great coordination between the incident commanders.
A lot of work. Now, this fire started yesterday afternoon in Trabuco Canyon, an accidental, but we do know more about how it started. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, so it was an accidental fire. There were crews from, I don't know, Orange County Public Works. They were doing some work on the roads in there. They were trying to close off some roads from motorbikes, vehicles going up into the canyons. And during that operation, they were moving some boulders and they sparked the fire. It was completely accidental. Nobody could have predicted it.
You know, I learned about some rescues that took place. A family of hikers and a man who was also living up there with some animals. They had to make some rescues because the fire grew and spread so quickly.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon on the initial attack, we did make 4 rescues. They were all hoisted out by helicopter, Orange County Sheriff helicopters. It was a family of 3. They was out and about doing their thing, and then a gentleman that lives up there with his cat.
I'm glad they are safe and sound. I know some folks were injured too from smoke inhalation. They're expected to be okay, along with those firefighters working so hard. And it is, as I was standing here, I've seen this now grow even darker, this cloud behind me, and which is why maybe some folks are deciding to pull out and leave their homes. And because once they leave, they can't get back in.
That's correct. Once they leave the evacuation area, they're not going to be able to get back in until we lift that evacuation.
The smoke in the air too is heavy, and it's going to be difficult on health conditions, people's health.
Yeah, anytime there's smoke in the air, people with health issues, we recommend they stay inside. Right now, the wind's favorable for the smoke. It's blowing away, it's clear. But this wind can change in a moment's notice. This fire, it's large enough, it's going to create its own weather, so that wind could shift back on us at any time. So
I'm going to walk over here, Captain, if you don't mind, and I only have you for probably a few more minutes, and our signal might be a little patchy up here. The reception isn't great next to these hillsides, and we have some towers up there you guys were trying to protect, some of the satellite towers. But you can see, again, these are the backyards butting right up next to these hillsides that were on fire yesterday, and why, you know, many people did not sleep if they chose to stay. They did not get any sleep last night as they were watching these flames come very, very close.
Yeah, the folks that stayed, they got a good show. The fire burned right up to their yards here. We did have crews in all these neighborhoods last night for structure protection and for their peace of mind. But yeah, the towers up on the hill, on Arrow Peak, those were threatened. They did get some fire damage today. We have not done an assessment on that damage, but they did take some fire today.
Okay. Thank you, Captain, so much for the time. Be safe. I appreciate it. We'll check back in with you in a little bit. I know usually we have updates around 4 p.m. we're hearing, so give or take, keep us posted on those new evacuation warnings. Amy, I see U.S. The Forest Service up here, too. Okay, it looks like he's given an update to, you know, what they know at this point with their coverage, with their response. But again, we'll keep our eye on this, Amy. As you see, it is growing darker, and they want to make sure some dozers get up here to create a bigger fire break between where this fire just kind of flared up And of course, this community in Robinson Ranch where I'm standing. Live here in Chirico Canyon, Jasmine Veal, KCAL News.
All right, Jasmine, and we'll check back in with you in a little bit, especially if you have an update from the folks from the Forest Department. Now, again, Jasmine is covering the airport fire in Orange County. We also have the line fire in San Bernardino County, but also the bridge fire in LA County, and that's where Mount Baldy is under an evacuation order. 76 homes are threatened by the bridge fire that's burning in the San Gabriel Mountains. It has grown to nearly 3,000 acres, and there's no containment. This fire broke out Sunday in the Angeles National Forest above Glendora. Hundreds of fire crews are battling the fire. They say the rugged terrain, along with the heat, has been making the conditions very tough for them. Of course, we are continuing coverage on the wildfires burning across Southern California. Be sure to stay with KCAL News, kcal.com for all of the latest information. We're also streaming on CBS News Los Angeles. Well, coming up next, we are going to wrap up our newscast. Stay with us. And the presidential debate is just hours away. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump will face off in Philadelphia. It is the only debate that both candidates have agreed to appear in. Tonight's debate starts at 6 o'clock Pacific time. The debate coverage begins at 5 o'clock on CBS Los Angeles Channel 2 with CBS News America Decides. Campaign 24, followed by the presidential debate at 6, and we'll have local news for you here on KCAL at 4 o'clock, more at 5 and at 6. We want to thank you for watching KCAL News at noon. Remember, the news continues right now streaming on CBS News Los Angeles. We'll see you right back.
When you get approved with Drive Time, you get the real deal.
It's the Drive Time Real Deal